Buongiorno a tutti! Thanks for joining me again in my little kitchen here in Lecce in the south of Italy. My name is Francesco and today I'm going to prepare a pitta di patate. This is a speciality from the southern part of Italy, especially here in the Salento, which is a very simple dish but very delicious. It's a kind of savoury potato cake. What you do is you boil the potatoes and then you mash them and make a kind of dough with breadcrumbs, egg, Parmesan cheese, parsley and a little bit of oregano. And what you then do is you make a base of this and then you put a topping onto it. You can do ham and cheese, some people like to do eggplant or bell pepper. I'm going to do a very traditional filling of onion with tomatoes, with olives and oregano. I'm going to add some nduja to add some extra heat and make it just a little bit richer. Then what you do is you cover this with the rest of the potatoes. So it's a kind of potato pie. And then you bake it until it becomes golden brown and crispy and delicious on the outside and moist and juicy and saucy on the inside. So it's a very simple recipe, but it's a great treat and I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, and yes, come back and follow me for more. Let's go. For today's recipe you are going to need potatoes, tomatoes, I'm using cherry tomatoes, olives, oregano, tomato puree, nduja, grated parmesan, breadcrumbs, onion, egg, parsley and olive oil. Begin by peeling the onion and cutting it in half. We're going to dice one half of it very finely so that it practically cooks away, and the other half we're going to leave nice and chunky so that the filling has a better texture. Next we need to peel some potatoes. I was making a small portion today, just 4 slices, and I needed 3 large potatoes to do that. Peel them and chop them into relatively small pieces so that the potato cooks more quickly. Boil the potatoes in well salted water for 15 to 20 minutes until tender. The next thing you need to do is to chop up your olives. If they have stones like mine did, it's best to use a knife and to cut the flesh away like this. The next step is to dice up your tomatoes. I was using cherry tomatoes, but regular tomatoes are just fine. You're going to need about 1.5 cups of chopped tomatoes to make this size of pitta. You're also going to need to chop some parsley. A small bunch is fine, and roughly chopped. Whilst your potatoes boil away, you can start preparing the filling. Start the nduja frying in just a little bit of olive oil until it begins to melt. Once it begins to soften, you can add the onion, both the coarsely chopped and the finely chopped. Fry the onions and nduja together until the nduja melts away and it becomes a nice uniform mixture. Season with salt and pepper to taste. The nduja is slightly spicy, so you'll have to judge this yourself. Keep cooking on a moderate heat until the onion becomes translucent. At this point you can add the cherry tomatoes, the olives, about a teaspoon of oregano, and mix everything together well. Keep cooking on a moderate heat and do not add any more moisture. You don't want the filling to be too wet. Push the tomatoes and olives to one side and add a tablespoon of tomato puree. Make sure this fries on the surface of the pan and get some good heat before you mix it in to the rest of the tomatoes and olives. You want to have a nice smooth paste like this. Check to see if the potatoes are cooked, drain them, and then using a ricer or a potato masher, make sure to mash them as finely as possible. The ricer is perfect for this. The smoother your potatoes are, the better the pitta will turn out. Make sure to mash the potatoes while they're still very hot. Firstly, it's easier to do, and secondly, as you can see, so much steam escapes that you have a much drier mash as a result. Now we can begin to flavour the potatoes. First, add the parsley, then a good tablespoon of Parmesan cheese, a teaspoon of oregano, and mix that in well. Make sure to mash the potatoes down and make a very smooth paste. Next, add a couple of tablespoons of breadcrumbs and a good drizzle of olive oil. Mix these in well and check the consistency. Depending on what kind of potatoes you're using, you will need either more or less breadcrumbs accordingly. Your potato mixture should be nice and firm like this at all times. If it's too wet, add more breadcrumbs. Season with salt and pepper and make sure that gets mixed in well. As soon as the mixture is cool enough, add the egg and stir it in well. Look how beautiful and golden that yolk is. The potato mixture should always be nice and firm like this. If after adding the egg it becomes softer, add more breadcrumbs accordingly. My baking dish was 7.5 inches in diameter. Make sure to grease yours well with olive oil, just like this. Add a sprinkle of breadcrumbs and shake them out over the surface to keep the potatoes from sticking. Add half of the mixture to your pie tray and flatten it out, pressing well into the corners using a spoon. Make sure the base is nice and thick. You don't want any of the filling to seep through. Now begin adding the filling. A nice generous amount, but not too much. Like this. Now from the remaining potato, make large patties like this, press them flat and position them on top of the filling right up to the edge. Loosely at first and then press down a little with your hands. Get your hands nice and wet and smooth over the surface of the pitta. Sprinkle with breadcrumbs which will stick to the moist surface. Now add another very light sprinkle of Parmesan cheese. More importantly, add a good drizzle of good extra virgin olive oil. And then, using a fork, score the surface, as this will help the pitta to become nice and crispy on top. Bake in a preheated oven at 170 degrees centigrade for 30 to 40 minutes until it becomes lovely and golden brown, like this. Doesn't that look amazing? You should allow the pitta to cool for 5 to 10 minutes before serving. That is, if you can resist for that long. The good thing is that pitta tastes wonderful whether served hot or cold. Make sure to cut yourself a nice big slice like this. It's absolutely delicious. Buon appetito!